Welcome to Modern Goddess. Here we discuss everything mastering your mindset, wellness wisdom, upgrading your relationships so that you can unleash your divine goddess essence and live your authentic best self every single day. I'm your host, Cassie Aurora. So hi everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. So today's podcast was not the podcast I had planned. I've had some technical challenges. I had an amazing chunk of time with Victoria, who is a human design coach. And for some very bizarre reason, half the podcast interview literally disappeared. I've tried everything. So I'm absolutely gutted, guys. Victoria's amazing. So we're gonna do an Instagram live for sure. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, follow me at cassieaurora.coaching, follow Victoria at Vital Becoming, and we'll share that because this podcast is gonna be awesome. But we're ahead of schedule, so that's fine. Let's roll with it. I want to always bring you guys interesting and thought-provoking content because I know that you are growth-minded, curious, expansive woman who, is interested genuinely in everything and trying to be as empathic as possible. And sometimes as an empath, what we really need to do is continue to develop our understanding of other people's realities. Otherwise, we can very quickly feel so much that we can't see other people, So one thing I wanted to share with you is one of the most beautiful people, really. We connected via Instagram, and this whole podcast is very it's a tender subject. It's about gender. It shouldn't be a tender subject, but it's so charged, and it's all about how no one is really talking about gender. Why is no one talking about gender? And this whole thing that I have never personally experienced. I learned about gender at university and studied it quite a lot. And this whole kind of thing about how we identify gender and how society kind of gives us a label, and we're born with that and we kind of have to roll with it whether we like it or not, So, yeah, it's been an interesting ride, to say the least, in this podcast because I'm trying my very best to be as kind of heart-led as possible, but I'm not going to get it right. So this is a sensitive topic. I'm not an expert. We're simply sharing and talking from the hearts as best we can. So I really hope if you notice this podcast will resonate with someone in your life, please share it with them. If it resonates with you, please reach out. So, in other news, I am so blessed because you guys are booking in astrology readings, which means I get to share more powerful information with you. I'm helping so many of you find your own unique soul's blueprint and really expand and grow beyond where you ever thought you could, and that's so exciting. I feel so honoured and blessed, really, that I have the ability to read astrology and give that gift to you and give you that act of service. I also have my reiki, don't forget, and lots of you are booking in for that. It's so fun sharing all this distance reiki and sending energy healing all around the globe. People are having such profound changes. What a blessing. And in addition, I've opened up my one-to-one coaching and already I've taken a few of you on, and it's just incredible to see session by session, hour by hour, women just stepping up and moving away from those stories and limitations that have been keeping them stuck, What an honour. So if you're sitting there thinking, you know what, I want a bit of that, I want to really get in touch with my own unique soul's energy, then absolutely, astrology, coaching or reiki, they're all options you can take. With astrology, I have 2 separate readings. I have a 1 question reading, which is a lower price point. and it's still just as priceless. It's just if you have one question. But most people, they do want a really in-depth reading because, you know, I definitely want to know all the things. I don't want just one thing. I want to know as much as I can. So if you want all the stuff and all the guidance and all the information and the inspiration about what's going on for you right now and where it's the season to focus your energy in specific places, then 100%, my love, book in your astrology. I will be honoured to read for you. And, you know, if you want more in-depth support, you know, I can support you in other ways. And that's something we can talk about when we make contact, which, you know, will be lovely as well to connect with you. And you can absolutely, you know, I am taking on a few more one-to-one clients. It's not something I open up to just anyone, because I want to work with people that are really ready to step into their power, and they're really women who you know, are really super heart led, but they may be feeling like they need that guidance to really start playing big in their lives, you know? And so I'm only really opening up a few spaces, but we can connect, we can book a discovery call, and then you can know if I'm the right fit for you, and how I can support you more, because that's really what I'm here to do, is to support you guys. So let's talk about today's guest. Today's guest, Sydney, she is a mental health therapist. She's also a certified personal trainer like me, and she is a light worker, a dancer, a bloody good one if you follow her on the IG. She's great, and a Reiki healer like me. Sydney is really dedicated to helping others find their soul's path and flow by creating a safe space for clients to explore all parts of themselves fearlessly and with unconditional love. I mean, how beautiful, right? So she's great on this podcast, and you really get to feel her sincerity, which I think is one of her most beautiful gifts. She's really vulnerable. You know me, guys, I like to poke with the questions, but she rises to it with absolute beauty. There's an article we talk about which is really interesting, so if you have a read of that in the show notes, I think that will really help you. Please give her a follow. She also has a podcast called Sessions with Sid. You should check it out because she's so sweet, and I really think you will enjoy this conversation. And I really think it will provoke a lot of thought for you, because I thought about it in a way that I hadn't before. And hey, if we're not here to grow, what are we here for? Am I right? So thank you so much, and I wish you the best day. And there is a moment in this podcast where we lose the internet connection because everyone's on Zoom right now. So there might be a little disruption in the middle. Just stick with it. It's all cool. You know, I'm not the editing boss of the world. And as you know, I've lost half the other podcasts. So God knows what's happening, guys. Mercury is nearly out of Pisces, and life can begin once again. So all the love. And if you want to reach out, don't hesitate. CassieAurora.com. Click on, contact me via my email in the show notes. I can't wait to hear from you and support you. So without further ado, let's welcome Sydney to the podcast. If you're a projector and you're around manifesting generators, like my partner's a manifesting generator, he can eat everything. He's like, because he's an energy type, so he can eat and eat and eat, and he can eat like carbs and potatoes and spicy foods. If I eat that, I will then take on the energy. So I will feel like a heavy potato and boiling hot face. Like that will happen to me. And like
when he eats those things?
No.
Oh,
But
if you
was,
ate them.
yeah, so if I was to eat them,
Oh.
the thing is, so because I'm around him and he's eating that, I'm picking up on that energy from him. So I'm not always even sure what I actually want, because I'm so aware of everyone's energy around me. And when I'm around manifesting generators, I can quickly get swept up in their plan for life and completely lose my own, you know? So it's like
Totally get it.
for me, I have to slow down a lot when it comes to, you know, because obviously my eating disorder recovery it's been long, you know, like a long, but I'm really hitting breakthroughs this like last year. But there's still a few things, you know, but I'm not, you know, gonna ever say that we're out of that pathology, because I
Yeah.
don't. I think it's about saying fuck it a little bit more perhaps. And also,
Yeah.
and then is fuck it coming from a place of, do you know what, I'm not going to be anal and worry about this? Or is it from, I don't give a shit about myself? And they're two different,
Right.
same words, two different things, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I totally do. And I feel like I've been coming from that latter message of like, fuck it. I don't care about myself, even though I do care about myself. It's just not like my actions are not matching that. And it's like, okay, well, if I really did care about myself, then would I be doing this? And I like what you said about tasty versus satisfying, because I think that plays into like emotional eating, where something can be tasty, but it's not actually satisfying, like you were talking about with the coconut thing.
Yeah.
And but you keep eating it because it's tasty, but you're like, this isn't actually satisfying me. Why am I eating the entire box of whatever?
What am I hungry for is always my question. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's okay to be emotionally hungry too, but it's always good, I think, to ask that question. And then there's other schools of thought that are just like embrace the fuck it diet, and they're just like eat anything whenever and it will even itself out. And I'm like, I know. Have you met a projector before? So yeah, we'll see. So let's segue.
Yeah, sounds good.
I'm excited for our chat today.
Me
I'm
too.
excited. I mean, this could go anyway because you know my MO. I don't even plan podcasts, right? Because it's how can you? Um, but I don't know where this is going to go today. So, do you want to share firstly who you are and
Sure.
yeah, so people know, but also I guess how we have connected because we've connected purely by the gram.
Totally.
Why we felt compelled to talk about what we need to talk about today. Because you
Yeah.
brought this to my attention.
Yeah, definitely. Um, we are definitely synchronously connected. Well, I'll start with who I am. So, my name is Sydney, and I am a mental health therapist. I'm not yet licensed. I'm currently getting my hours toward licensure. So, uh, I'm what's called an associate professional clinical counselor in the state of California. And I'm also certified personal trainer. Um, I'm a big yogi and hope to be certified in that soon. I am a dancer. That is a huge part of my identity. I've been dancing since I could walk, I'm pretty sure. And it's my passion and the one constant, or one of the constants in my life that very much grounds me and brings me back to the core of who I am. And I'm also going to call myself a healer because I am a healer. Um, and part of my story, I will share about my awakening, my spiritual awakening, which started in 2018. So that's a bit about who I am. And we were connected through Christina Rice, who we both adore. um, and I remember she had a podcast with you, and I was like, oh, who's Cassie? And, I'm really interested in astrology as well, and started following you. And you had asked for podcast topics recently. And so I reached out to you and I said, well, what about talking about spirituality and gender identity and you were so receptive to it, which I appreciated. And you humbly said, I don't know much about this. I'd love to have you on the podcast. So here we are.
You said that so well. And also when you said like you were a dancer, I was like, oh, that's your Leo South Node. I was like, there it is.
My fire.
Yeah, like Leo is all about dance and creativity, and yeah, and you've come into this life, probably in a past life you're a dancer or some sort of performer with a Leo South Node. Yeah. So
Cool.
yeah. So yeah, the reason I was like, you need to just come on and talk about this, because I actually studied gender identity at university quite heavily. It was actually
Did not know that.
yeah, so I did a musical theatre degree, but I specialised in how gender is performed and also how it's stereotyped. So, and I particularly studied a lot of obviously femininity, but I did study a lot of hypermasculinity, because that was just something that really fascinated me. And I feel like with femininity, and we'll get into, I mean, gender as this whole construct, but I feel like with femininity, for me, it was like I'm too close to it, so I couldn't see it clearly. Whereas with masculinity, I was so outside of it, it was very obvious to me. So, I mean, do you want to break down literally what gender actually means, or perform gender? Because gender and sex are not the same thing. And this is what people always get wrong, right?
Yes. And I'm going to say that I am no expert in gender. So I just want to say that I'm purely talking from what I know in my studies and experience. So I just wanted to say that.
Don't worry.
I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
No. But yeah, so my understanding is that gender is a made up construct in society, and it is typically thought of as the binary, so man, woman.
Yeah.
But there are so many gender identities, so many. I mean, just it's incredible. And it has nothing to do with sex, which is the sex is assigned at birth. So based on your genitalia, really.
Yeah.
So you can be assigned female at birth, you can be assigned male at birth, but you cannot be assigned a gender, but society assigns everybody genders. And that is a problem because it puts people in boxes, and then it makes people who don't fit into those boxes feel like they don't belong, and that they like don't matter or aren't seen, and that's so problematic.
Oh, it's problematic. And thanks for explaining it that way. And another way that I always felt that I liked to explain to me, just to help when I was at uni, was how Judith Butler talks about it. And she says a gender is a set of it's performative. So gender is a way that we perform our identity. And I was like, that's really nice to think of it that way, because it's not inherent in who you are. It's like you can perform something, but it's not inherent in your actual being. You know, we learn to perform and act in a certain way, which is quite interesting. But it is problematic because anything in society, whether we look at gender or race. And that's not to diminish the thing on gender at all and say, well, what about race? It's just gender, race, I don't know, religion. In the West, it's like, if you are not the white, heterosexual, male, Christian locus, then what are you? And if you're not conforming to how we want a woman to be or how a man should be, then wait, actually, like, you're doing it wrong, you know? And we only need to look at an advertisement to be told everything that they're trying to make us be, right? So,
Totally.
yeah. So tell me, when did you first start to come to the realization that, and I'm not saying this is true for you, I'm just speculating because this is what we're talking about, that the gender you'd been assigned by or prescribed by Dr. Bloody Society was incongruent with your values that you were discovering?
So this is such a loaded story, but I feel like it
Go into
illustrates.
it.
I feel like, so this is the most vulnerable I've ever been publicly in my life. So here we go.
This
Got to
is
do it
what I
sometime.
do.
Okay, so this will tie into my awakening. But so basically, the beginning of this is in 2018. Phones are dying, and I don't want to. Can you hear me?
Yes, my love. And
Okay,
actually, the
sorry
sound is
about that.
better.
Okay, awesome. So in 2018, my grandmother, who means everything to me, was diagnosed with terminally ill cancer. And I'm realizing now as an empath and projector that I was sort of mirroring her decline. And my mental health started to decline. And I started developing OCD, intrusive thoughts. And they were thoughts about my identity. So they started out, as OCD does with intrusive thoughts, as a seed of a thought that you latch onto that then becomes so distressing that it causes an incredible amount of anxiety that you want to escape from. And for me, it was about my identity, my gender identity. And that was obviously very stressful because that had never happened to me before. And at the time I was 28, so it wasn't very long ago. And it caused me to start questioning everything I've ever known about myself and about my identity, and basically kept getting worse over the course of 2018. And she passed away in August of that year. And it had gotten really bad by that point. And it was so bad that I actually was suicidal at one point. And because it was so distressing for me to question like something I've known forever as fact, and just have that completely, like, I think of it as a snow globe that's just like turned upside down and everything is flying everywhere. So that's the origin of it.
Mm-hmm.
Since that year, I've been awakening and learning so much from so many different people and the healers that I've worked with, and stepping into my my gifts, and learning that this is a part of how I was designed, is to be a heavy thinker, to be this fluid being, this and learning about energies, masculine, feminine energies, which has nothing to do with gender either. It's everybody has them regardless. And so, yeah, I hope that sort of answered that question. There's so many things I could share about that,
but thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing that, because as you were speaking, like, I could really feel it. I could really feel like what you've been through is quite significant, and at that time you're going through this period with a relative that you really, really love, and yet then you're going through these difficult questions about, well, really, who am I? And that in itself is huge. Like, I'm wondering, like, at that time, who was there to support you? Because that's really disorientating. You're having these thoughts you never had before. And there will be people listening to this podcast that for sure have been in this place, I'm very sure, you know? So I'm just curious to see, like, who did you reach out to and how did they respond, and how did that make you feel?
Yeah. Well, I have a really supportive father who has been there for me. So he's definitely a person that I turned to and is a huge support for me. I heavily relied on the people who were synchronously put in my path at that time. My spiritual healer, who I also synchronously met, my friends who have always, my soul family who's always stood by me. I have people that I could like call and just weep to, and they would just be there holding space for me. My own therapist, my guides, my grandma. I mean, she's.
Sorry, I'm just kind of, so what I'm trying to get at, I guess, is, do you think without those support networks, you would have been able to kind of get where you are now? Because there's people out there, I'm thinking, how do they go about opening up the conversation? Like, how did you approach that conversation when all of a sudden you're going through these thoughts, these changes, and your whole identity is sort of being thrown into question? How did you find the courage to really say to those key people, shit, like, there's something going on here that I'm not okay with?
Yeah. I think it really got to the point where I was like, I actually can't deal with this on my own anymore. Like, the anxiety was so big that I had to start opening up about what I was struggling with because it was too big to hold
Mhm.
myself. Um, there was so much fear, so much shame. I think there still is. I mean, even just being on this podcast with you and like sharing is really scary for me because there are people that have
Mhm.
um, no idea whatsoever that this is like what has been up for me. And then there are people that are really close to me that do, but realizing that opening up to people who loved and cared about me and could hold space for me in a loving, non-judgmental way was so important for my healing and my growth,
Mhm.
and it still is and always will be. And also just like putting aside the mindset that I've had, which is like, I can do this myself and no one will ever have to know about it and I'll get through it and it'll go away. And realizing like some something that's persistent, it's not gonna go away if you don't look at it.
Mhm. I'm I'm gonna swing pivot a little because
Sure.
thank you for like sharing so honestly, because like I can't really imagine what you've been through, in terms of those kind of, I want to use the word like a crisis of identity, because
Mhm.
I think a lot of people, when they're shedding layers of themselves that weren't even constructed consciously, they were kind of decided for them by society, it can
Mhm.
be fucking terrifying. um,
Yes.
and society doesn't support that necessarily. We actually have to have the courage to reach out and sometimes be the first person in our circle to hold up a hand and be like, um, this is real for me. So
Yeah.
well done for having the courage, because even though gender is talked about, it's not. Like, it's the
Mhm.
same as people are like, well, we've got, we celebrate Women's Day, or we celebrate, I don't want to get this wrong, so, like the Rights of Black People Day. I
Mhm.
don't want to get it wrong, but like basically, and then they feel like, well, there's no discrimination because there's awareness of it. It's like, no, that's bullshit. It's actually bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, there's, discrimination about disabilities still. Like, it's, so, and some people, take the excuse, well, I don't mean to be racist, or I don't mean to be this way, or I don't mean to, but everyone's frigging conditioned, right? So,
Yes.
and we're all trying our best, I think, but some of us, I think, are happy to sit in ignorance rather than talk about gender because we're uncomfortable, because we don't
Mhm.
know what to say. We don't know if we're going to say the wrong thing. So, why do you think it's so important to open up the discussion about gender, and especially in the realm of like spirituality? Because it's not talked about in spirituality much, I don't feel, as someone who's always, in this field. So why do you think it's so important?
Yeah, really good questions. I think it's important to open up the conversation because it's not really that easy to open up for people who I feel don't identify in the binary. Um, it's so, quote, easy to talk about the binary because it's the majority, if that's the right word.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's easy to be like, oh, happy Women's Day, but it's not as easy to open up conversation about the many, many other gender identities and like being inclusive about those. And then it leaves people feeling like, well, I don't fit into this binary, so maybe this conversation isn't relevant to me, or like this holiday is not relevant to me, etc. And so I think it's really about like safety and making people feel safe, making people feel seen, heard, valued. Um, yeah.
100%. I agree. Because if you hadn't raised it to me, I've studied it at uni. I still don't really, obviously in the theatre space, you get it a lot. You know, you get
Mm-hmm.
it's accepted, but it's still the minority. And isn't it shit that the only spaces that are safe are performative spaces where it's like a
Mm-hmm.
very illusion, Neptune kind of space, you know, like, well, it's theatre, so it's fine. Whereas the
Right.
minute you walk down the street and say you turn up, I don't know, say you turn up to a yoga class, no, it'll be accepted in yoga definitely, but
Mm-hmm.
around here, but you know, just down the street in general, people that are just completely ignorant and just have a problem with other people doing their thing, they're the first ones to point out when someone is not normal. And whether that's friggin', I mean, as a woman, already get stereotyped
Mm-hmm.
and get catcalled and shit. Like, but
Yeah.
for, you know, someone, you know, who is already questioning themselves and then they're trying to work out, you know, how do I want to perform? Is it even important? Like, yeah, like no one's making them feel safe.
Yeah.
I feel
Totally.
like no one feels safe. And if they look outwards, they're never going to feel safe, right?
Yeah.
um, I feel like it's up to us to make ourselves feel safe and accepted, but I feel like support there can help us see that in ourselves, you know.
Totally. I think what you said was so on point, and I really like this analogy of performing, because it is a performance. Like how we express gender is like this outward physical performance to the rest of the world, but like our soul, you can't, like, you quote, can't perform your soul, right? You just are your soul, you are your being. And I think that really segues into like when you're asking, you know, why is it so important to talk about it spiritually? Well, performing, that's ego. Like performing is, I want to look a certain way to the rest of society and, you know, do it for the show. Whereas like soul is like, I don't give a shit what you wear, what you look like. You know, I care that you're, you know, a good human being and that you're making a difference in this world and you're living out your purpose. Like, put on the dress or don't put on the dress. I don't give a shit. Let's just get to work, you know? Like, I feel like if the soul could talk, like, it would say something along those lines.
Oh my god, that is so spot on. It's, and I think it's okay to wanna, you know, show up as certain things each day.
Mm-hmm.
Like I love like saying, how do I feel today? And then I might wear something to reflect it. You know, sometimes I want to be ultra feminine or yin or whatever society wants to
Mm-hmm.
construct around that. And sometimes I want to just lay low, you know, and it is like, if this is the thing, you hit the nail on the head. Like soul is unconditional. It just is,
Mm-hmm.
whereas everything else is pretty transient. And like we say, this performed identity, which essentially any identity or any layer we're wearing is just another layer. And sometimes we just have so many that don't serve us, you know. And sometimes
Yeah.
it's like, where did I get this layer? Wait, what the fuck? Like, I, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
choose this. It's like when you're a kid and your parents choose your clothes
Yeah.
and society's choosing all of your internal clothes and you're just wearing
Yeah.
them. and you never wash them, and you're like, wait, shit, like those jeans that the British government picked for me based on their advertising to get in my head. Actually, wait,
Yeah.
they're not even the jeans I want to wear. I don't even fucking like jeans.
Yeah. Amen to that. Jeans are terrible.
I mean, I
But
bought blue
yeah.
jeans and the other day, and I wore them for like 2 hours, and I was like, I should just paid for good jeans. They were like £3. I think that's like $5 or something.
Yeah.
Hideous. But yeah,
Such a good analogy too. Yeah.
I think with this stuff we have to talk in analogies
Mm-hmm.
because no one on my side who's not had that kind of, and I still do identify with my gender. I'm not going to sit here and say I question it because that's
Mm-hmm.
not true for me. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I'm like, shit, like I have no understanding of this. We can talk about
Mm-hmm.
eating disorders all day and we can
Yeah.
talk about sexuality all day. But gender, now that's something I've not experienced. So,
Yeah.
what resources and books might be useful for people who are perhaps sitting there listening and thinking, "Oh shit, like this is really resonating and it's triggering a lot for them," or it's just making them curious? You know, do you have any that you would share or you feel are particularly powerful?
Well, um, as a therapist myself, I am going to first and foremost say it's really important to have a safe space to talk about these things. So, whether that's with a therapist, a spiritual healer, a coach, um, to have at least one safe space that isn't biased um, would probably be number one. And relying on your support network as well. And I mean, I really think that a lot of my resources, I did research. I just learned more because I didn't understand like what was happening, and I kept trying to figure out like what's going on, what's the language for this, and I really, I don't know, it's not always good to Google stuff, but to kind of search, you know, for places that feel resonant to you. So a lot of spiritual resources. There's an amazing article that I sent to you, which maybe we can like link to, which I think is so validating. Like it's so normal to one, be human and like have all these questions about ourselves, and also especially if you're going through an awakening, that you're supposed to shed these layers and like question all these things, and like it's not pretty and it's scary and it's icky, and it's also like supposed to happen
Mm-hmm.
too. Because a story that I got stuck in for the majority of this process is like, why is this happening to me? Like, why is this happening to me? You know, is this mindset I was in? And just kind of stuck with that. Like, and I would think to myself, like, I wish I was just, quote, normal, like other,
Oh.
I wish I was, yeah, quote, normal, like other girls. Like, why can't I be like a normal, quote, normal? I'm saying quote, because what even is normal? Like, binary person. And like, I don't even know, honestly, to this day, like how I even identify myself. Like, um,
society labels me as a woman. And although that is what I look like, that's not like my internal feeling all the time. Like I feel like I'm very much in this like swimming in this in between space. And like, that's why the word fluid really resonates for me. And like, even be careful, like trying to label yourself right away.
Yeah.
Because, and this article kind of really lays this out, but it's like, you can be shedding your old identity, but then be careful, like don't get married to a new identity, because like identity is, again, like it's like boxes, you know, like even me saying I'm a dancer, I'm putting myself in a box.
Yeah.
That's a box that feels incredibly true for me. But I would say like, be careful to like, one thing I came to terms with is like, society is always going to label me by what it sees on the outside. And like, we can't always control that.
Wow, that's so powerful. You know,
Yeah.
that acceptance. Because then you're like, it's not even why is this happening to me? You're just going to, I accept, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it's also, I also feel like what's coming through that I feel like I need to say is like something I've heard before, which is like, it isn't your responsibility to change how you're performing. I like using this analogy to fit like what you want someone to view you as. Like, you can be a non-binary person, which is like where I feel I fall at the moment, that most feels resonant to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I can still wear heels and I can still be a non-binary person. Like, but society will see me as a woman still, a woman wearing heels. But I can't like spend time changing that, you know, so that other people view me the way that I want, like that I feel internally. And like, while some people do that, and that is totally valid as well, like it's not your responsibility to do that.
Oh my God. What an amazing note to finish on. I mean, I would love to chat longer. I wish time wasn't a thing today.
I know.
Oh my God. So you are going to be, you are a really powerful voice in this. And if you don't realize it, holy shit, you're going to fire up a lot of people to be able to tap into more of who they are through realizing all the parts of them they maybe are not. And you totally nailed it. Like all these identities and layers, they're transient, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and the biggest thing is just accepting everything changes, accepting where your power is, which you totally, you know, you nailed. And in that, this is when we're living, you know. So go you're gonna be, you're just gonna I mean, I really think if you had a podcast on this shit, like you would touch so many people.
Well, I do have a podcast.
What? You never told me this.
Yeah, so I really appreciate what you just said, by the way. Thank you. That really means a whole lot to me. I'm learning that using my voice is really important for me as a projector, and I know you totally relate to that.
Yes, to guide the energy, girl. And I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
You did tell me you had a podcast, but you said you stopped doing it. No, you need
Yeah,
to begin.
I
Okay.
did actually yesterday. I
Yeah.
meant to tell you. Yeah, so it's called Sessions with Sid, SYD. And I did start back up yesterday after hiatus. And I had these stories that no one cares what I have to say and they're not interested and no one's listening to my podcast. So I'm just going to stop. But I realized like that's all bullshit.
That's
And if
bullshit.
anything, if anything, this podcast that I'm doing is for me, and if it helps even one person, that's awesome. So yeah, I mean, check it out, and perhaps I will put this episode on there as well. That would be
yes.
awesome.
Oh, my love, your podcast is gonna bloom. It's gonna boom and bloom. And it's gonna touch so many people. I'm so lit up for you. Thank you for having the courage to show up today with just love and vulnerability, and you're just gorgeous. I'm
Thank
buzzed.
you.
I'm buzzed. You have made my week. And
you
just
too.
gonna say,
thank you.
Don't ever worry. People are not like, when that little imposter comes in, no one cares what I have to say. Do you know what? People will watch like reality TV, like Big Brother. Have you, like, I don't know if you had that in the US, but they like, we would just watch people doing a workout in the garden and watching people sleep, and then they'd move and they just moved. Like, hun. Let's be real. Everyone wants to be a fly on the wall, and the right people, they're going to find you, and you are going to be, just, you're going to share so much that needs to be shared, because for sure it has to happen, right?
It does.
So it's happening
for our own healing. Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Thank you so much. This has been such an amazing experience. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Thank you. So thank you for coming on. Just let people know where they can find you before we hop off recording. Just let them know.
Sure. Yeah. So you can, again, find my podcast sessions with Sid. It's a bright pink thumbnail, so you can't miss it. And my Instagram is I'm going to do my soul flow. So it's soul flow, FLO, with Sid. So SOULFLOWITH, Sid, SYD. And I would love to hear from anyone that this resonates with. It would mean a lot to me to hear from you. So please reach out.
Reach out, tag us, let us know. I'll be sharing this for sure with my theatre community, because it's something we need to open up about for sure.
Thank you so much. This has been healing. For sure.
Mean, what else are we here for, babe?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you so much, Sydney.
Yeah. Thank you.
So be sure to reach out to Sydney. I know she's going to love to hear from you. If you like this podcast, share it, subscribe, let me know. And see you soon, my loves. Enjoy your week.